I think the poet Annie Dillard put it best when she said, "How we spend our days is of course how we spend our lives." So the question is, where exactly is our time going? And with the recent rise in time tracking tools and software, this is a question we can actually now answer a little bit more concretely. So if you haven't already implemented a time tracking system for yourself, or you haven't quite settled on the right tool, this video will walk through a Notion time tracking dashboard, which is going to integrate a few different tools to get you a clearer view of where exactly your time is going. We'll do it in 6 steps. First, we'll take a quick tour of the dashboard and what to expect. Then we'll discuss how to duplicate from the Google Sheet, which runs all the back end of this system. We'll talk about how to embed and publish your charts from the Google Sheets view. We'll discuss how to log your entries manually if you're not using an automatic time tracker. We'll talk about logging your hours with Timely. And finally, we'll discuss how to automate your entries with Zapier and Timely so that they end up in your Notion dashboard. So let's start with a quick tour of the time tracking dashboard. From this main home view, you'll see there are 5 tabs at the top, which we can navigate through. On the left menu, there is a linked database with our objectives showing the progress made toward these objectives in various areas. We have a breakdown of our total hours over the last 7 days. So this graph will automatically update to show the most recent 7 days of activity. And as you hover over each different date, which is in the bottom in the x-axis, you'll see the precise project as it has been tracked and the number of hours for each particular project. If we scroll down in the left menu, there are a couple more links for us. So we have our link to our Google Sheets, which is responsible for the back end of all of these different charts. We have a link to a clonable Zap if you want to do the automated entries, which we'll discuss in a later step. You can click directly and clone this Zap from Zapier. And we have a link to our Timely dashboard. Again, if you're using Timely, that can be helpful. If you're using another time tracker, feel free to switch that out with Clockify or whatever you happen to be using. So you'll see in this home menu, again, there are a couple more charts or visualizations for us. We have just kind of our total for the limit hours, which we'll discuss. We have our productive hours broken down by project. We have our billable versus non-billable day by day for the last 7 days, and then a breakdown. We have our total project hours broken down into this pie chart, and we have a total statistic for our learning hours. So let's just take a look through the 5 views that are in this current setup. We have a productive view, which is just going to show us a filtered version of the charts that we have, showing just our productive hours. And we'll discuss how to tag projects as, productive. You get to decide which land in that bucket in the Google Sheet. But this is kind of, if I am trying to understand so I see my total hours in the overview, I get a feeling for which days were, had a lot of activity. If I go into the productive section, I can see more specifically which projects have been active and how much of my total hours have been spent productively. I can then check in on my learning. So if I have any learning goals, perhaps that's a new skill I'm trying to develop. Maybe it's just a general kind of reading goal that you've set for yourself. Again, you can create an objective. So let's say we wanted to create a new learning objective. Because this database is linked to the full objectives database, we can add new objectives for any view. So if I add it from here, it's going to automatically know that it's a learning goal. Let's say I wanted to read for, let's say 5 reading hours per week. I'm just going to label it like that so that it shows nicely in the gallery view. I'm going to give it a target of 5. And the average hours or reading hours per week is something that I can log manually in Notion. So we can keep it or delete this one if you want directly from this view. But this is going to show us a visualization of our learning hours as filtered in our Google Sheet. Limits are going to be projects or activities that we're trying to, as it suggests, limit the amount of time spent. So that might be, maybe it's Netflix, maybe YouTube, maybe it's social media or Twitter or something that you're trying to cut down on. We get a big statistic of what our total consumption of those limit hours is for the last 7 days, along with a breakdown of which projects are contributing. And finally, we have a billable section, which is just showing the number of hours that are billable for us, broken down, billable versus non-billable, also day to day. So those are the 5 main views. It's quite simple at the moment. We're interested in developing this feature a bit further, so I'm curious to hear your comments about which precise charts or areas you'd like to see more detail on or less detail on. So if you are interested in this getting fleshed out a little bit further, please do leave a comment below letting us know, and we'll be happy to add to this setup. So next we're going to talk about how you can recreate this setup for yourself. And the first step is going to be to head over to this clonable Google Sheet. So if you hit that link, it's going to open up a new tab for you. We just have a split view so that it's a bit easier to see what's going on in this one. If it's your first time with the template, then you can hit make a copy. Let's call it copy of. That's fine. And what we're going to have now is your own editable version of the template, which you will need to input your own data. So right now, obviously, this is showing some dummy data, which is just to kind of show some values for the visualizations. But obviously, we want this to be linked to your own data. And so the main areas that you should be aware of in this Google Sheet are this All Charts tab, which is at the very beginning. And this is just going to house all of the charts that are generated by this Google Sheet template. We have our raw input sheet. The reason that there are so many empty columns is because it's been set up for the Timely Zapier automation. If you do want to use that, a lot of these may not be relevant for you though, so you can always just delete these columns and it won't influence the rest of the templates. But very basically, this raw input is then going to feed into our cleaned data, and that is what is going to generate these pivot tables. Now, don't worry too much about going into these various pivot tables. These are just to make it easier to create the graphs and filter the data. Again, the main ones that you'll want to focus on if you're just kind of coming into this without too much comfort with data and spreadsheets and this type of thing. Inputting the raw data can be done here, and it's also where you're going to link any Zapier automations. Cleaned data is where you can kind of get a nicer view of what exactly is going on and check that it has all been set up correctly. So let's say that I wanted to log a new entry. I could do so directly from this raw input data. This is if I don't have the automated time tracking Zap set up. So let's say that I just wanted to add very quickly. I spent an hour designing and I did it today. That's fine. 1 hour in the logged hours column. The logged money, we can enter a 0. That's just going to inform our billable and the total budget and this type of thing if we want to set that up with Timely. Then we're just going to give a true or false. And what that does is it helps our billable versus non-billable hours. So if it's true, this is set up as a formula so that if this is true, it's going to be a billable amount, and if not, it would end up in the non-billable hours. So if we're inputting manually and we're logging new entries, the main things to hit are the project, the date, the build or not build, and that is going to automatically tell us whether it was billable versus non-billable. So let's say that you have gone through this, you have either imported entries from your time tracking software or you have just started adding for yourself. These charts are going to be updated with your own particular entries. And what we need to do now is update these charts to show your charts. So right now, this is still linked to the original template, and you probably don't want that. You'd like to have these charts updating with your own data. The best way to do that is going to be to create an embed, and you can do so by hitting / and then typing embed. What you need here is the link to this particular chart. So how do we get a link for this chart? You go to the 3-dot menu in the top right, and we're going to hit publish chart. Now it's going to have some information about which chart and how you want to do it. You can leave it as the defaults, hit publish. It'll ask you if you're sure. And what we need is to copy this link. So it's already highlighted. We can just hit Control-C. I'm going to paste it in here. That's my embed link, and Notion will work some magic. And we have our chart, which is going to be dynamically linked to this data. So as this input data changes and updates, and as you add your own entries, this chart will refresh every time you refresh the pages and return. So it's not immediate, it's not instant, but it's quite quick actually in terms of updating and refreshing. So once you have got your base data updated, you can head over to the all charts view, and all of these charts will be updated based on your new inputs. And then from there, it's just a matter of filtering through, finding the charts. So productive hours, I'm going to look for in my all charts view, and it is missing. So I'm just going to add that right now because that was a bit silly. So I'm going to add that to, by the time you view this video and view the template, it will be in here. So I've found my productive hours for the last 7 days. It has been updated with the projects, with your own data. But there's one more step which we need to do to ensure that all of these charts are showing the right thing. So this is where if you do want to make use of the productive, the learning, and the limits filters, the filtered charts views, there is an extra step, and we do need to go into the data a little bit more closely. So bear with me. If I want to ensure that this learning hours chart is showing the right projects, such as reading and Coursera, what I need to do is head to the learning hours tab, and I need to click anywhere on this pivot table, and it's going to show me the pivot table editor. Now what this is filtered to show is the date and the project, and the value is the hours. Don't worry about any of that. What we need to go to is the filters section, and where it says project, you can see that it's showing 2 items. Now this is where you can choose precisely which project tags you think belong to the learning category. So for me, I've selected reading and Coursera. If I hit design, it's going to add design into this pivot table chart. I don't want that, so I'm not going to have that, but you can do the exact same thing for each of these filtered pivot tables. So for the learning hours, I'm going to find project. I'm going to select the projects that I want to show. In the productive hours, I'm going to head down to the same exact spot, project. This is showing 5 different items that I've selected, and those are exactly the items that are going to show in this productive hours chart. So again, because this is kind of an intermediate solution setup, it's a little bit fiddly at first, but once you have this set up and you've selected the projects that belong to the various limits, learning, and productive filters, from then any time that you add to those projects in the input data, you will automatically have these charts updated accordingly. The remainder of this video is going to cover the Timely and Zapier automation. So if you're not interested in that, Thank you for watching, and let me know if you have any comments or questions about the video. For the rest of us, let's quickly navigate over to Timely. So again, you have a quick link here. I'm going to go into this Landmark Labs view, and I'm going to go to a dummy day, which let's take the 9th, where there are some hours that I can log. So if you haven't seen Timely before, it is an automated background time tracker. In the background throughout the day, any screen time that you are active, it will automatically log and categorize in this neat little view. So it doesn't place it in, it doesn't log the hours automatically. What you need to do is simply, you can select and tag various items from this view. Let's say these were all related to a project, which is product. Once I hit that, these particular items are going to get logged as under the product project, which is quite neat. Again, if I want a simpler version, if I can see this area was kind of, taken up by a certain project, I can go in here. Let's say it was freelancing, submit, and it's going to create an entry with that particular time slot. So this is how we log hours in Timely. If you are not familiar with it, if you haven't used it before, I would highly recommend it. It makes life a lot easier for time tracking and logging your hours. And then the next step after we have logged our hours in Timely, you can always take a look at the reporting in Timely itself. But again, what we're trying to do here is set it up to show automatically in our Notion dashboard. Next thing that we need is a Zap to automate this whole process. So from this view, we can click and open the pre-built Zap in Zapier. If you're already logged in, you should see this view, and you can hit try this Zap. So what we need to do, it's going to show us what's going to happen. I'll hit get started. It's going to connect to any existing accounts. You'll probably need to add yours if you haven't already had this set up, but in my case, it's already ready. It's going to ask you which workspace you want to use. I'm going to select the one that is already selected. Getting data. It's going to ask me which Google Sheets account you want to link it to. Let's go to this second one, I think. Hit next. Which drive? Let's choose the only option. And then we're going to choose the spreadsheet that we want. So I'm going to hit this time tracker dashboard, the integration template, and then I'm going to select the input raw data here. So this is important. We have the correct sheet, the correct workspace that we're selecting. Now we need to select the input raw data sheet, and that's going to link us to the right place. It's going to ask us which fields we want to take from Timely and add to that sheet. You can select or deselect any of these that you like. By default, these are the ones that are going to be selected, and those are the ones that we walked through in the worksheet. Next is going to just give us a kind of a chance to check that the right details are getting passed along. So if we have a client name, it's going to go into the client area of the sheet. These titles for each field are actually showing the titles given in this Google Sheet. So if I have date, I'm going to click and I have a bunch of options, and I can choose the day property from Timely. So right now it should be all set up correctly. That's why we made this pre-built template in Zapier for you. So that should all be fine. I can hit next. So now if we hit test, it will create a spreadsheet row in the sheet, and we can even click directly to verify. We can take a look what it's done. So it has added the clients, the product, the name of the project is product, which is the most recent in the database. The date was today, 2.7 hours. and it has given us all the info that we need. So if I head over to the charts, or let's say this is going to be a productive hour, it should have updated these values and it will update the charts automatically. So we've covered a lot of ground in this video. It's a little bit more technical than some of our other implementations, and that's because this is a feature which we would like to develop further, and so we're really looking forward to getting your feedback on a few areas specifically. One, how simple or difficult or complex have you found both the tutorial and the implementation efforts on your side, even just for the manual Google Sheets entry, but also on the Timely and Zapier integration. And secondly, we'd love to hear any other aspects of the time tracking workspace which you would like to see included. So fire away in the comments, and in the meanwhile you can head over to landmarklabs.co to download and duplicate this workspace setup for yourself.